How's it going? We got another nice afternoon here in San Diego. Today I'm working on the Nova and I just got these parts in from All Star Performance. It's a Type 2 GM power steering pump and their bracket kit for a small block Chevy. And I'm going to be test fitting these today. I don't have the steering box or the lines yet. The steering box should be in next week and the lines I'm going to be try and have made here in town. But I can show you a little bit about how to convert your car to power steering. And just in case anybody was curious, we got some part numbers here. I got these both from Summit Racing. It's a pretty good price for both of them. I think it's a pretty good deal, and the advantage of this is that you can use an LS style Type 2 pump that'll give you a little bit less assist if you're not looking for an overly assisted feel on your steering. But it'll be a more modern design, it'll be super responsive, and should be pretty reliable. All Star Performance puts their pulley on here, which is a bit of an underdrive pulley. So you can still bump up the assist a bit if you want to put a smaller pulley on there. And I went with the lower block side bracket here. So what this is going to do is it's going to mount power steering right down here, right next to the damper and the lower pulley. And they do have kits to mount them up here on the head as well, different brackets for the same pump. And it's kind of just preference, and I particularly wanted to mount it lower just because I didn't want any issues with header clearance or anything like that. The reason, also another reason that I'm using an LS pump is that in the future I hope to do an LS swap, so I will hopefully be able to keep the same power steering pump. So I've got the bracket opened up here. This is a really nice machined aluminum and anodized bracket. You can see there. It's got a real good look to it. It's a little shiny. It's kind of got that machined metal look to it, which is always cool, especially in an engine bay of a car that maybe you're doing some racing with. I like the blue. It'll look good in contrast. It's kind of the same as typical AN fittings for anodizing. I'm also hoping to have AN fittings on the power steering lines as well with some stainless hoses, and that'll look pretty slick. It's got all the hardware included. It's got washers and bolts, both for the block side and for the actual pump mounting. And then this is the little backing, I guess you could call it a backing plate. And it's going to go on the back here so that you can have something for the pump to bolt to, and you can adjust it for belt tension. Alright, so I've got the bracket mounted up here. It's a pretty good fit next to the water pump here, but it clears just fine. And now I'm going to try and test fit the pump here. So, see if I can get this set down here. Maybe not. So the pump is going to have a hard mounting point down to the bottom bolt, and then this top bolt is going to have that backing plate on it, and that's going to help you adjust the tension. So I just realized something, and if you're using this kit, it's probably a good idea to have the backing plate installed in the back side of the bracket before you bolt it to the block. I should have thought about that before. What I did was I backed the top bolt off here and just laid it over to the side. And I put the backing plate back there, and I put one of the pump mounting bolts in through it so that I don't lose it while I'm bolting the bracket back up here. Alright, so I've got the pump mocked up here. I haven't tightened everything down yet on the pump. Just check alignment here. As you can see, there is a little bit of a discrepancy between the two pulleys, so I am going to have to get some sort of a spacer for these bolts. Probably a good 1/2 inch to a 3/4 inch. That shouldn't be a big problem though. I'll just get some longer bolts for down here and space it out like so. And that shouldn't be a big problem. And I'm going to get these tightened down just so I can see how everything looks bolted up. Alright, I've got everything tightened up and everything looks good. The bracket feels super solid. The pump feels good, spins real nice. I'll have to get a straight edge on here to figure out exactly how much space I'll have to put in here with a spacer to line up the pulleys. Once I get that figured out, then I can get my power steering lines, and once the steering box comes in, looks like we'll be set up with some quick ratio power steering goodness. This old stock manual box is, it's not great. It feels fine. It feels better than the one that I had on the car before, the one that ended up breaking. But like I said, it's still manual steering. It's a stock. It's very slow ratio. The box that I'm getting, actually that's coming in from Rock Auto, is a 1998 Jeep Grand Cherokee steering box. It's 12.7 to 1, and it's about 3.3 turns lock to lock. So not only will it be a faster ratio, almost twice as fast as the box that's on it, but it also will allow for a better steering radius. The only limiting factor here down in my steering linkage, I believe, is the sway bar itself. I don't have traditional steering stops. The arms that I have on it are Chevelle steering arms that I had to use with the drop spindles. And that's the steering stop right here. You can see it right here, this little kind of finger that reaches down here on the steering arm. I can chop that right off and have quite a bit of clearance there with the control arm, but the sway bar, as you can see, sorry about that, comes right up to the mounting bolt on the steering arm, so that will be pretty much the only limiting factor in terms of steering angle and such. It would be really interesting maybe in the future to entertain some, maybe a custom sway bar and mounting point for that end link, but that's a ways down the road. For now, I'm going to be super happy with some quicker ratio steering and power steering as well. I'm not a gigantic fan of power steering. I do like to keep things simple, but on a car like this, there's just no quick ratio manual steering options. And the power steering really on a V8 isn't much of a power loss. There's plenty of power and torque to go around. It's not that big of a loss unless you're looking for that last a little bit out of your engine. And I'm not on this engine, that shouldn't really be a problem, but it will help the overall performance of the car immensely in terms of handling and drivability. And once I get that lined up, I also have a new master cylinder coming in from Summit Racing, and it's for a 1976 Chevy Monza, and it's supposed to be a better match for my Willwoods. Currently I can't even lock up the tires, it does not engage properly. And a friend of mine spoke to Willwood, and he said that they recommended to go down a size in the, a size or two actually, on the bore on the master cylinder. And so this is about a 1 1/8 bore stock GM master cylinder. And that is just a little bit too big for these 4 pistons down here. It's actually can be better to use a smaller bore size with more surface area in your brakes, actually smaller surface area, because they split up between 4 pistons what the factory brakes had over just 2. So there's a bunch of ratios and calculations and stuff that go into that, but the master cylinder itself was less than $50. I think it was less than $60 to get it shipped, so I figured I can try it, and if it doesn't work I can always put this one back on and go from there. So hopefully I will have this thing autocross ready in maybe less than a month. I'm hoping to shoot for the end of October to get this thing down to Qualcomm and go kill some cones. But I gotta wait for the steering box, and then I'll set up some hoses and get a belt in there and get everything lined up. But until then, I'll probably make another video when that comes in and we can get everything test fit in, and we'll have some fun. Thanks. Guys, we're not done yet. I was able to run down to my local hardware store and grab some new bolts and spacers right away. So you can see these are the bolts from the kit, and these are the bolts that I picked up. They're about an inch longer. I need about a 3/4 inch more, and about no more, so that's alright if I have to trim them, but I think I still should have some room because the actual length of the threads, you can see, is the same. So I should be able to screw it in about the same way. If I need to cut off a little bit of thread from the end, that's not a big deal. I was also able to get some spacers. They're not solid spacers, they are basically sheet metal that's been rolled. You can see there's a seam there, but it should be okay. This isn't going to bear a whole lot of load. It just needs to hold the steering pump in place, and it shouldn't be a big deal. If you're going to do spacers on something like sway bar end links or something that's loaded with the weight of the car, you do need to use some sort of a solid spacer. Otherwise, if you use a type like this, you might be able to find at your hardware store. It's convenient, but they can split and they can squash because they're not all kind of one piece around. It's a flat piece of metal that's been folded over. So I'm going to throw these on here, and hopefully we can get these pulleys to line up a little bit better. Alright, so I was able to get the spacers to work, and yes, I have a nut in here, but it is a grade 8 fastener. It should work well instead of stacking washers or getting another spacer. That'll work just fine for now. So yeah, it looks like it's lined up pretty good now. I can even slide it all the way over, and you can see it's pretty darn good. So I think we've got it there. That's all mounted up, and just gotta wait for the steering box and the lines, and then we should be good to go. Thanks.